Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cinema Wave podcast. We are here to talk about Dev Patel's Monkey Man. This is a movie that is produced by Jordan Peele, written, directed, starring by Dev Patel in his directorial debut. I am one of your hosts. My name is Darian Vinny. I am joined by Vinny Albano.
Hello. Pleasure to be here.
This is one that Vinny was very excited to talk about.
Yes.
He put his dibs on this a while ago when we were going to bring this to the table. But this movie had a very interesting sort of journey to get to where it is now. And I felt like it was on my radar because I was kind of following it because I think it filmed in 2022. So it filmed a while ago. And initially, the movie was going to be on Netflix. It was going to be a streaming movie. Netflix decided that they were going to sell it off. They sold it to Universal and in particular Monkey Paw Productions, which is Jordan Peele's production company. And he's produced some projects before that he wasn't necessarily writing or directing, but this is the one that I felt like even on the press tour, like he's been everywhere. Like I think he was on Jimmy Fallon talking about this movie and he kind of came on afterwards and was like, I'm going to help you through distribution and all this stuff. The movie cost $10 million to produce. It made $10 million opening weekend, so it already made its money back. But of course, there's marketing and things there too. So I think if it makes another $10 million, it'll probably break even, which is still for a movie of this size and this caliber, it's still really good. What were your initial thoughts before even your thoughts on the movie? Like when you had first seen the trailer and you had heard about Monkey Man, what were your thoughts on this sort of project?
Yeah, so I love Dev Patel. I think he's just a great guy. And I loved him in The Green Knight, which is a film that I personally really adore. So I was very excited going into this, especially hearing, an actor coming to the directorial title. That's something that always excites me because actors, they act, so they know how to direct other actors. So I was very excited, and hearing or seeing the trailer was like, I already love this because I have a deep-rooted love for the revenge subgenre and revenge as a thematic element. And I love John Wick. John Wick's here. Just seeing this was like, all right, this is gonna be dope. So I had high hopes, and for me personally, the film delivered on them. So,
awesome. I think I agree with Dev Patel is. I feel like still at this point is still an underrated talent. Doing The Green Knight, I think, was a little bit of a departure from what he's used to doing. And I think it was really great for him to work with somebody like David Lowery and get his hands on sort of a different sort of genre and being the leading man in something where he could be like billed as the hero. Obviously, for the people who aren't aware, he got his start, like his main United States start, basically with his breakout role in Slumdog Millionaire, which is a Best Picture winner. I don't know if you've seen that movie and what your thoughts on that are, but he's been someone that's been in talks for, it feels like, years with a bunch of different projects. And it was Slumdog, and then it wasn't until 8 years later that he got Lion, which was nominated for a couple of Academy Awards. And then The Green Knight came 5 years after that. So there's like big gaps in his filmography of like, why isn't Dev getting work, or he's not appearing in as many things? He was also a recurring character on this really great romance show on Amazon called Modern Love, which I recommend, and he's really great in it. But he had a lot of interesting choices, and the thing that I think is sad is he probably wasn't getting as many offers, which is surprising coming off of like a Best Picture winner. And a big part of that some people might point to as a diversity issue, what have you. So he takes it upon himself to co-write this project and direct it and act in it. And I felt similar to you because I had known about the project that it was getting made. I knew that he was in it. I knew that Charlton Copley was in it, who's in all of Neil Blomkamp's movies. But everybody else in the movie is someone that is not of like name recognition. But him, like you said, actors doing directing for the first time is always an exciting prospect. Because though you're right, actors they work so much with directors and they try to probably take all these little nuances from all the directors that they get it from. Not all actors can be great directors, right? And then there's people like Jordan Peele, who comes from the world of comedy, and he kind of flipped everyone's expectations on their head with who he is as a filmmaker. So Dev putting himself in something like this, which is a blood-soaked revenge action-heavy movie was very unique, and I agree with you. I think it delivered on a lot of the things. There are some things that I felt that, and this is going to come with kind of directing your first project. There are moments, I guess technically, that I would have liked to have been cleaner. But having known sort of what happened with the production of the movie, I don't know if you've seen some of the things that he's talked about, but like he's like, yeah, we were having cameras break every day. We started filming things on our iPhones, like,
and that's definitely something I want to talk about in the discussion
because there's a big part of the structure of this movie, and I think that we both had very interesting theater experiences. And I had thought, I mean, my theater, I thought the volume was turned down a little bit too low.
Yeah.
But you had said that you thought there were issues with some of the sound things as well. That stood out to me. But the big thing for me that I'm going to start with a gripe, because it's a technical thing, it's not a story thing. The shaky cam to me was a little too heavy in this movie. And I think that comes with practice in the action and choreography too, because like John Wick, which is now 4 movies in, has such crisp choreography with everyone involved, with the actors, with the stunt people, with the fight choreographers, with the cinematographers. And this, it felt a little jarring at times where it kind of took me out of it, where I was like, oh my God, what is going on? And I couldn't even follow it. How did you feel about the camera work? Because you are our resident camera guy here.
Yeah.
I'm curious on what you thought. It's not like my opinion matters, but I'm saying that was something that stuck out to me where I was like, I wish it was a little bit crisper, whether it was with the shots or maybe even in the edit, that maybe they could have cleaned that up a little bit better.
Yeah, so I disagree.
Okay.
I disagree entirely, actually. So I have seen that complaint online though, because people are liking this movie, but I think I'm an outlier because I really like this movie compared to the mass majority of people that are like, oh yeah, it's good, right? But nothing more than that. And I seen that gripe online where people are complaining about the shaky cam and just kind of how chaotic it is. However, that was my favorite part of the film, is that visual aesthetic and visual identity that not only does Sharon Mears' cinematography as director of photography, but Dev Patel's directorial presentation and how he presents the film was my favorite part. I like when films are rough around the edges sometimes. I like when it's dirty and chaotic. And I could definitely see that being an issue for some people. Totally understandable. But for I, as the Vinny Albano individual I am, I like really liked it because I just, off the bat, I loved how dirty, and every frame is just dirty and chaotic and exciting. And sometimes it just loses focus and we're in a blur, and it's like almost like we're in the action and we're within his fury of rage. And I really like that. I like when films can get quote unquote dirty like that.
Yeah.
Like I said, rough around the edges. I think it also really fits the setting here where they're in Mumbai. And also kind of, we could discuss later on in the discussion how Dev Patel really hits on a lot of commentary here. Speaking of, the economic status of a lot of these main characters in Mumbai. But I just thought that visual identity just paired so well with these other elements of the film that I liked it. I
can understand. Yeah. I can understand why. I think that it's not even like a gripe necessarily fully with like shaky cam. It's just, to me, it felt, and I agree with you. I think the grimy element of what this movie presents itself as, with not only like his upbringings and, like you said, the economic status of the Indian people, but also sort of the underworld of what Monkey Man is about, which you find out in the beginning. He kind of has these dual identities essentially. But to me, it felt a little too chaotic at times, and that's where I think it lost me. And I think of a movie like again, kind of different, but like The Raid is a movie that like is probably my favorite action movie ever.
There was a Raid reference in this.
Which scene was it?
Oh yeah, they referenced it in Jujutsu Kaisen as well.
Okay, that's
so
awesome.
Whenever I see that reference, I'm like,
it's awesome. Well, the Raid is so influential to, and I Letterboxd sat down with him and asked him some of his influences for this, and the first two we said was Enter the Dragon and The Raid, which were two. So I can see that, I can feel that fully in this movie, which is a testament to his directing. And again, going back to what I had alluded to a little bit, like they had production issues with this movie. Like they were breaking cameras because they were trying to maybe push the envelope with the cinematography. To me, it felt too much like a roller coaster ride at times where I didn't necessarily need it to feel like that the whole time. And I did think pacing wise, the movie has interesting ebbs and flows. I think that like you think you're getting to a place where it's like, all right, now we're jumping into the action. And then you don't for a little bit. And then I sat within a lot of what comes after he basically tries to enact his revenge plot early in the movie, and then he kind of goes away for a little bit and he recharges, and so I was on one plane with it, and I was like, oh, all right, we're in the action, and then the action kind of stops, and then I'm like, all right, interesting, because now I'm at a different point and we still have like an hour left in the movie, but then I thought they did a really good job of pacing the intimate scenes, and then when you get to the end, it's like an adrenaline rush towards the end. But I did think towards the beginning of the movie, like I felt like the last hour was much crisper than the first hour. But I did like the different sort of elements that he brought to the different environments and the street fighting element, which is a little bit in the trailer, but there's also this like Fight Club element to it, which I always like movies like that, like Snatch, like Warrior, like and even like the Sherlock Holmes movies are kind of whatever, but I love those scenes with Downey. They're
one
great.
of like the best scenes.
Exactly. So I'm a big fan of sort of seeing that play out, and I enjoyed those scenes. And Copley plays such a piece of shit in everything he's in. So he does a good job there. But yeah, I thought that technically it's not that the movie was bad. I was hoping for a little bit more tightness, but at the same time, it's a directorial debut. There's going to be missteps. There's going to be things that not everybody agrees with. And obviously you're an outlier in that because you liked a lot of what we saw. But I also did see some of that online, and I like to do a little bit of research after I see the movie. And I agreed with what some people's gripes were. And I can understand the movie is rough, but it's supposed to be. It's supposed to sort of have that feeling to it. His character, who's just titled as Kid. What were your thoughts on his portrayal of this sort of this orphan of life, this like outcast in every circumstance that he's in, and trying to make the most of it for this? I mean, his character is ripe for revenge, 100%. Yeah. So how did you feel about his portrayal and the character of Kid in general?
Yeah. So this is going to be a long response, so I apologize.
No, you're good.
But I want to take it way back. Because this film has so much of the same identity of my favorite films. Okay. And also has the same identity as my passion project that I've been writing for over a year now. And which is also a revenge story. So I think it's just kind of perfect. I can understand he's a silent hero a lot for most of the film, and he very much falls into a trope. And I think that's my biggest gripe with the film, is that it falls into its cliches and it falls into its tropes for the genre. However, for me personally, like, it's still delivered and checked off every box that I wanted it to check off. So even when his character at points can just feel like a plot device, just to keep things moving and, tragic backstory and then just right into the action. But it's also like, I think that sometimes that's all you need, So I understood Kid as a character. I understood kind of Dev Patel and his portrayal there. I also kind of piggybacking off of that thought, Dev Patel is so good in front of the camera and behind the camera. I think he's just so overwhelmingly confident in everything he wants to do here. And it inspires me so much as someone who wants to be a filmmaker and, looks up to people like this. It was just a beautiful display here that I really appreciated. But yeah, just kind of answering your question, Kid is sometimes flat, but I think it's just enough, which, could be a complaint. But like I said, like the goods, the pros outweigh that for me.
Yeah. I think that he does a really good job of showing off this intenseness in the movie that we haven't seen a lot from him before.
Yeah.
And kind of, again, painting himself as this, like when he brought up Enter the Dragon, it made so much sense to me because he's like, I grew up just like adoring and idolizing Bruce Lee. And there are elements of that to this character that you can see. Also, I like the con element to who he is.
Yeah.
And even his relationship with certain people. I forget the character's name, the elderly gentleman that sort of takes him in, Alpha, who's played by Vipin Sharma. He has a great relationship with him towards the end of the movie. And Alfonso, who's played by Pitabash, who I think is so great in this like really fun bit comedic role that actually winds up having a lot of heart to him. I think Dev commands the screen unlike, I don't think a lot of actors can do this movie. Like, I think that a big part of that is his stylistic choice too. And people like that movie Nobody that came out with Bob Odenkirk, like I hadn't seen that.
Yeah.
And I know that some people liked it, but it didn't do as well as maybe something like this. Or again, John Wick, who has somebody with Keanu Reeves who's just able to sort of command the screen, even though he is that silent hero, right? He has what in the last movie he had 20 lines of dialogue for a 3-hour movie.
Yeah.
So it's not that extreme in Monkey Man. And the one thing that I actually really appreciated too about this, and it's interesting because I'm so happy that you got such a great experience, like an emotional response to it. I think that his acting is great. I think his writing, and he co-wrote this movie, but the mythology that comes with the story that sort of piggybacks off of his character in the ring, so to speak, as Monkey Man. Yeah. It's the I want to get the name right.
The story of Hanuman.
Hanuman, yeah, inspired by the legend of Hanuman, who is like this icon, who's this mixture of a monkey and a boy who has these godlike powers and abilities. And you see that sort of play out towards the end of the movie too. We're not going to spoil this movie for anyone who hasn't seen it, but I thought the being able to interweave that and make it feel like it had a deeper meaning to everything he was doing really impacted that character for me and kept me on that ride and wanted me to keep like the influences and the parallels between the mythology and what his life was and how it echoed that was something that I really loved. So I don't know how you felt about that part of it as well.
That was also one of my favorite parts of the film. And it also adds into, like I mentioned, the visual identity and Dev Patel's decision to his different decisions on how to present the film. That leads right into that because the film very much, like you mentioned, is deeply rooted within the legend of Hanuman and Hinduism as a whole. And we have a lot of Hinduism mythology playing part here, references to Shiva and other Hindu mythology and legend. But what I loved was, no spoilers, but what I loved was kind of going into the later part of the film. It gets a lot more spiritual in nature, a lot more mystical.
That second half of the movie.
Yeah,
I agree.
And with that, the presentation begins to change, the editing and the sound design, the music, from everything, even the cinematography, just everything begins to get more flowy, more mystical, more, and I love that. I love that so much.
It also feels elevated though.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, but it just feels like the movie sort of hits this other gear. Like if you're driving a car that's not automatic, like it just hits this other gear and you're like, oh shit, I didn't even know that this element of this story was going to come. And it's alluded to in the beginning of the movie, but it hits, and I felt like that second half hit it in stride and just ran with it.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that also kind of brings back to your point about how you felt the later half of the film is better than the first half. I actually agree with that because I think it feels like it comes into its own towards as it progresses. It just kind of feels like the film is growing as it goes on. I love that spiritual aspect. I thought that not only are we following his journey of revenge, and we're with all the filmmaking decisions at play here within the, like I said, the visual identity of it and everything else here, not only are we as an audience thrown and feel that fury and roaring inferno of revenge, but we're also feeling his spiritual journey as well. And there's a point where it's almost like, I don't know, I was beginning to feel, I was feeling things, you know.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
And also, like, I guess I don't want to go too off topic here, but leaning into some other points of the film that I liked is this film like really touched me. Like I said, not in a spiritual way, but also emotionally. Like, there is some scenes where Dev really plays on the dichotomy of the things being presented here. You know, that having one thing shown and then the next thing shown, and having just, you know, it's a tale as old as time. That contrast between storytelling of like, okay, here's this and here's this, and he just does it so well, and it got a real oomph out of me.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I noticed.
I was gonna, like, I agree with you, because I do think that in the second half of the film, it's like the perfect mixture of emotion and drama, and heightened circumstances and action, and it's just tight. Everything feels tight in that second hour, because the movie does run 2 hours in a minute. But for me, it's I one thing I definitely want to talk about are the action sequences, because so much is sort of balanced on that aspect of it. Right? I mean, the movie is marketed as John Wick, and there are elements of that 100%. And this feels very much more akin to like the first John Wick, which, like, there is a little bit more backstory. You're learning a little bit more about the character. But there was, when you dove deeper into Kid as a character, he was more appealing than John Wick even was throughout 4 movies, because there's such an emotionality to him, like you said, and he's got these traumas, and he has these experiences that he's witnessed with his own eyes. And like we've talked about, it's a revenge story. And I think that the juxtaposition between him and I want to get the character name right as well. It is Rana Singh, I think it is, who's played by Sikander Kher, who I also think was like so menacing and so great in the antagonistic role in this. But there's such a great juxtaposition between those two, and right and wrong and good versus evil, that's apparent in this movie. And it doesn't feel like it's beating you over the head with it, because at the same time, like, you see throughout the movie, Kid is doing things that are unethical to get to where he needs to get to, because of the circumstances that he's in. Going back to sort of what you talked about in the beginning, what he grew up in, what his experiences are, where he currently lives in Mumbai, and the things that he has to do, and the situations he has to put himself in order to get himself in certain rooms with certain people, getting himself with his ear close to the door. I mean, Alfonso in the very beginning is very questioning of him. And he talks about, like, I mean, there's callbacks to things like Bleach in the movie, which that it's just like, it's very interesting to see those little nuggets of things that carry on throughout the movie that I accredit so much to, again, the storytelling, which is why I'm so impressed with just the script in general with this movie. Because not that some of those, The Raid is a fantastic movie, but so much of that is kind of based on the choreography. It's remarkable. Like, it's some of the greatest choreography. It might be the greatest ever. And this movie doesn't hit to those levels, but it kind of keeps a good fight along with that, while still giving you those spiritualities, those emotional moments between Kid and his mother, and even little moments that he has with, like, the kid earlier on in the movie, where he's like rubs his head and he gives him information. Like, that kind of stuff adds an extra added layer to the story and makes you really feel for the character throughout the whole entire movie.
Yeah. No, you said it best.
I said a lot.
You said it best. You said it best. I really liked it. I mean, I have minor gripes, but other than that, like, there's a lot here that inspires me as a filmmaker, and also just took me along on this emotional roller coaster that I adore. I want to talk about specifically, you mentioned the little storytelling elements of it where it's like there's so many little things that are perfectly, they have just the right amount of oomph because they establish them in the first act, and it's that Chekhov's gun, right? You establish something in the first act, and then it plays a part in the third, and it just kind of, there's, everything feels as if it has a purpose. I do want to speak about the choreography specifically.
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like we haven't even touched on the action, and it's such a big part of the movie.
You mentioned it, so let's go into it. It's I really adore it. I adore it. I think obviously the third act is what is just incredible here, but it's fast, it's brutal, it's epic. It had me literally gritting my teeth. There's moments where it's just so shocking. There's moments of just utter relief where you're like, whew, like you're in it. You're strapped in this seat for the roller coaster, and it's crazy. And I love that. I love that a film was able to get that out of me. I think what year are we in? 2024? All right, 2024 has been crazy because I felt the same way with Dune, and now a month later, I feel this way with Monkey Man
in a different way. As well.
Yeah, it's similar though, because different but similar, where it's really just absolutely riveting. I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie, so seeing that is just, it got me, it really got me. There's just, I can't really go into it because spoilers, but
you don't want to spoil certain sequences. I will say, to me, the action really stood out, especially for a first-time director, and how he was able to sort of navigate that. To me, the claustrophobia of the close-ups what really got me probably up a whole half letter grade or number grade based on how we do it. But it's like he was able to do really interesting things with his close-ups, in which he was doing such great hand-to-hand stuff because the movie isn't heavily reliant on a lot of gunplay, which I also love, because I feel like sometimes, like, as much as I love the John Wick movies, like, it's sort of turned into like Machine Gun Preacher, like literally, like, it's just, that's what the movies become. And this, it coincides so perfectly with the setting and the feeling that you get when you're in this movie, when you go from him having these battles in a ring in an underground fight club to now being dressed up to the nines in a nice black suit, and he's like getting ready to do what he's got to do to basically get his vengeance that he's been looking for throughout the whole entire movie, and basically for his whole entire life. So yeah, we don't want to spoil too much, like, but this is a movie worth seeing. And I think that there's a lot to it. There's like you said, there's emotion, there's drama, there's brutality, there's heart to it. It's a thriller. There's suspenseful elements. There are things that really shock you in this movie, especially towards the end. So I don't know. We've touched on a lot. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, I just want to specifically play into or talk about Dev's journey about getting this film off the ground.
Yeah,
because it's an incredible story, right? So they film it, COVID, right? So they're now that COVID hit, they have to play within all these laws, obviously for within the pandemic. They wanted to film it on location, and they were losing their locations. They ended up creating a bubble in Indonesia, and then
500 people, right? I think it was.
Yeah. And then in this bubble, now other laws are being placed in. So now they can't fly people out. They can't fly things in. So they're breaking cameras, and they can't get more equipment. They're losing money. Dev talked about how they came to set one day, and all the tops to the tables, there was no tops to the tables. He's like, where's the tops to the tables? We don't have any money, and we can't fly anything in. So the other producer on this film had to take a loan out of his own personal credit card to buy his own money to buy the tops to these tables. And they were constantly improvising, losing locations, improvising, throwing set dressers and other people who worked on the film in the frame because they couldn't get more extras, right? They were limited. And just having all of that happen for a directorial debut, and seeing the product that was created here and the amount of passion that is behind almost every frame, like I mentioned before, sound like a broken record, but it's inspiring.
Yeah, 100%.
It is like, it actually like Dev, oh my god, like he did such a good job here, because I don't want to butcher his quote, but I remember watching his interview and how he said that's filmmaking, you know, and that's the perfect summary of it. That's filmmaking, you know. You're gonna get hit, and it's almost gonna feel like the universe is out to get you because everything is just going wrong, but you improvise, and if you just if you have the will and the fight and the struggle to move forward, and you have that passion, then you can make a good film like here. And also the confidence of Dev being able to do that, and the confidence of this film as a whole, with the fact that, like you mentioned, how ambitious it is as a directorial debut to have this epic blood, you know, just crazy action movie as your first feature film to direct. And like on top of that, you're commentating on things like gender and fundamentalism and Indian politics as a whole, which is also, you know, this film has been postponed, and as of right now, we don't even know if it's going to get released in India because of the censorship there. So that kind of said something, you know. And Dev here, that's just, I don't know, I really respect the fact that he has the oomph to just go all out for his first film.
Well, he has the
say that
he has the drive to sort of put the art in front of it. You know what I mean? Like he has the ideas, and he has the ambition, and he has the love and passion for cinema to be able to be like, well, you know what? I'm going to have to just roll with the punches, because if I don't, then nothing's going to come of this. And to emphasize that beautiful story about like where he came from. And again, I think a good way to even sort of circle back to the beginning, like this guy was the star of a Best Picture winner and has a very sporadic filmography. And that's just in front of the camera, and he's a terrific actor. The fact that he was able to get through that period and still get through that in his life, and then come around and make a movie like this, make it for 10 million, have somebody like Jordan Peele, who has one of the most powerful voices and, I mean, honestly, like checkbooks currently in Hollywood, because he's one of the people that they're saying, you know what, anything you need, here's your money. You want to do anything original, here's your money. Because they know that Jordan Peele as a name is enough to get people in the fucking theaters. So the fact that Dev was able to do that, he was able to achieve so much with so little, has me excited for what's to come for him. And it's not to say that I don't like this movie, because we'll give scores in a minute, and I really did enjoy this movie. But I'm excited to see sort of where he goes from here, because I think he's the type of talent that deserves to have a pedestal. He deserves to be sort of springboarded to the top. And it's like, I hope that he works with Monkey Paw now. I hope he does a film like from the very beginning and inception of production, and be like, oh, you had 10 million for your first movie. Here's 40. See what you can do with 40. Don't worry about the tops of tables. We'll cover the tops of tables. You know what I mean? And the fact that he also co-wrote this and acted in it and did action sequences that he had never, ever done anything close to in his entire career. It's a really great, and like you said, inspiring sort of feeling to have for a talent like that. And I felt similar when I saw Get Out. Just to, again, like keep it in the family. Like, he was the guy on Key and Peele. He was a sketch comedian. He was making movies like Keanu. Like, that was what Jordan Peele was. And then he was turning around, and he's hit after hit, regardless of what you think of the movies. They've grossed a crazy amount of money. People really enjoy his originality when it comes to horror. And he's able to put his own stamp on everything. And that's what I'm looking forward to with Dev going forward. What is going to be his stamp? What is going to be, how is he going to be looked at as a filmmaker? And how is he going to, I mean, he's inspiring you. So he's going to be able to do that going forward. But I really enjoyed this movie. I recommend it to everybody. I'm going to give my score, and then you're good to give yours.
I just want to say one thing real quick. At the beginning of the review, I mentioned how this film has a lot of similar DNA. It has the same DNA as a lot of my favorite films. And I can see the homages being too much sometimes. Like I mentioned, I think that is my biggest gripe with the film, although I think the pros heavily outweigh that to the point where I don't mind it, but there is a lot that just kind of feels like, okay, I've seen that before. There's a lot of old boy in here. I mean, even like his fit at the end is the same fit that Odesu wears in Old Boy. There's a John Wick reference. Like I said, there's a Raid reference when they're standing off, and from the Raid 2, like that. But I just find it cool as a fan. I'm like, there's so much of that similar DNA here. I also want to talk about just really briefly the representation in this film as well. Like I said, he's able to comment on a lot of stuff within Indian society, but also having, a group of non-conforming gender people, and they're badass. They have one of the coolest scenes in the movie, in my opinion, and I love seeing that. I love seeing that representation. So yeah, we could give scores.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the representation too is something really great to highlight. And I was thinking when I was seeing this movie in the theater, I was thinking about sort of, I haven't been on the podcast, but I've been lucky enough to produce them when you and Zach talk about Shogun, and how it's like these underrepresented people finally getting a spotlight. And I love when we get that in movies like this. And it's like there are so many talented people in this movie that I hope get bigger opportunities and bigger roles because of this movie, and Dev put him in that position. So I think that's really great. But I really enjoyed this movie. I highly recommend it to everybody to go see it. We did our best to talk about this for, I think we're at like 25-30 minutes at this point without spoiling it. So I hope you guys do go and see it. I'm going to give this film an 8. I think it's really, really solid. I think it's a really good movie. It's one of my favorites that I've seen so far this year. Like you said, we're in April. I think that as a storyteller, Dev has a really great future. Yeah. I think that there's just some things that need to be cleaned up in terms of technically. And yes, this movie is homage heavy, but I think that was, for a first time filmmaker, that's to be expected. It's like he's trying to be like, I'm a cinema fan too, guys, which everybody knows and appreciates. And that's why I'm excited to see what's going to be next for him as a filmmaker, because he is going to get something else. Like this movie, like we said earlier on, has already made back its budget completely. And shout out to Jordan Peele for taking a chance and believing in what this project is and could be. So my final score is an 8. I feel like yours is going to be higher, but I am interested to hear. So.
I'm giving it a 9.
Okay.
Yeah. It's it was cool, man. I'm excited to see what Dev Patel has in store. That handsome devil.
Yeah. Oh, he's a handsome man.
Oh yeah.
We all know that. Everybody in my theater was saying that. I don't know if the same thing is happening with you, but listen, give Dev Patel more opportunities, give the underrepresented people in these movies more opportunities. But really excited to see what he does next. We hope you guys enjoyed our review of Monkey Man. If you guys can, let us know in the comments what you guys thought of the movie. I think that a lot of the things that I've seen from critics and fans, people really seem to be enjoying this movie. It's more positive, obviously, than negative. I haven't seen really any negative reviews, just sort of maybe a little bit less than some others. But let us know in the comments what you guys think. Be sure to leave a like on this video. If you guys could subscribe to us, we are Culture Wave. This is the Cinema Wave podcast. We have other podcasts for you guys coming as well. You guys can follow us on Instagram at Cinema Wave Media, as well as at _Culture Wave Media, and at Jersey's Finest Pod on Instagram as well. We're also on Threads. We're on Facebook. We are on TikTok. We're everywhere. So you guys can follow us on all those different handles at all the different social medias. But really enjoyed this episode. Just signing off. I am Darian Scalamoni.
And I am Vinny Albano.
And we'll see you guys next time.
This is The Culture.